every day, over 100 people die on American roads. And we're taught to believe that this stems from things like reckless driving. But in reality, much of the harm comes from design choices that were intentionally made years, sometimes decades ago. Professor Archer, your book, Dividing Lines, shows, among many other things, how design choices can separate communities and how that inflicts lasting damage for generations. Can you talk a little bit about how exactly this impacts Black communities and how they have suffered from design choices made decades ago?
And I like that you talk about design choices, because it is a physical design choice, it is a policy design choice, it is a design in our larger system, the way that we have utilized transportation writ large to reinforce inequality. I think about the built environment. We have lots of conversations about monuments and maybe kind of debates and fights about monuments in this country. That largely it focuses on statutes, right? The statute to the white supremacist, the statute to the colonizer. I think those conversations are important because it speaks to who's valued, who is ignored and who's silenced. But I also think our communities are monuments to white supremacy as well. The way that they have been built, the schools that we don't have, the parks that we don't have, the hospitals that are not there, the water infrastructure that feeds you unhealthy water instead of nourishing water, all a part of that. And so is transportation infrastructure, and it's built into our communities. And so we see traffic enforcement being layered on top of that without an acknowledgement that the system was designed to separate, to segregate, to target, to penalize Black folks and keep our communities from becoming thriving, healthy, happy communities.
So what I hear you saying is that these are intentional choices made effectively to prevent these communities from succeeding.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, you have the criminal justice and policing, the enforcement side of it, which effectively adds insult to injury. So just say a word about what that looks like from sort of a policing and enforcement context.
Right, so first I'll say what it looks like on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of people see this. Some people think it's natural. Of course, this is how communities have evolved, and not realize that the highways and roads played a role. So after we saw the successes of the civil rights movement and the loss of the traditional tools of segregation and inequality, we saw states and localities turn to transportation infrastructure as a more durable tool to reinforce racial inequality. They knew that building the roads in certain ways, building highways and bridges would outlast evolutions in civil rights laws. And to a large extent, they were right. So we saw the Interstate Highway Act co-opted as a tool to reinforce segregation. Highways around the country built through Black communities to destroy and remove Black communities, to become a barrier between white communities and Black communities. But we also saw it kind of was a layering effect, right? So we layered on that streets and road grids. We layered on that public transportation that we all know started with explicit racial discrimination and then evolved to being governed by dog whistles. And then we have pedestrian infrastructure that is inadequate. It really reveals Jim Crow because Black and brown communities don't have the resources. And rather than respond with investment, we are responding with policing. We are penalizing the folks who have been forced to live in these confines. We are penalizing the folks who don't have sidewalks to walk on for walking in the street. We are penalizing the folks that don't have cars for having to use public transportation, right? If you think about all of this as theft, that if you jump the turnstile, don't pay a bus fare, that it is theft. But also, if you don't pay your parking fee, if you don't pay the meter, that should be considered theft as well. But we will give someone who hasn't paid their meter a $30 ticket and forever to pay it. And if you don't pay it, we give you a gentle reminder to pay it again. If you jump the turnstile in many jurisdictions, the police are engaged. There are serious consequences that could involve jail time, right? And so it's not just about the physical infrastructure when we talk about what we've built. We have built a system that layers onto that, brings police into contact with Black and brown folks every day in ways that don't improve safety, but instead continue to penalize communities for the way that we've built them.
Criminalizes people for just for going about their lives in a way that wouldn't occur if there were instead investment in that infrastructure that could instead get them where they're trying to go safely.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time traveling around the country and go to various communities, and I grew up in a community in a suburban community where you see that it's possible to structure our communities in ways that drive health and safety, but don't use police, right? Mm-hmm. Suburban white communities are safe because they build systems that invest in the people who live there, that invest in the infrastructure, that invest resources in their children. And so you could go days and days and days and never come in contact with a police officer. But when you look at black and brown communities, we believe that policing is safety, that we invest in policing but not in the other resources. And so it's very hard to live your life, to walk a block without seeing or encountering a police officer. And when everything is criminalized, then it's easy for us to see why the number of police officers in our community combined with the everything is a crime results in the number of stops and police interactions that we see.
Going to jail for long periods of time. So just as we wrap, give me a thought about, I can imagine many policymakers and advocates come to you asking, what can we do about this? And your book does a great job of sort of laying out a variety of different issues and how, you storytell in an incredible way and really making it real for how folks experience this in their day-to-day lives. But how would you recommend policymakers, advocates go about making this change if they're interested in seeing real investment?
I think I don't have one answer to that, right? We all have to work at different registers. We have to speak at different registers. So I believe that we should be thinking about all the important questions that the convening that you are hosting is thinking about, and how we right-size traffic enforcement. How do we shift the way that we are engaged in that? I think about this as a civil rights lawyer. How do we develop civil rights tools that are better equipped to addressing the kind of inequality we see in traffic and transportation infrastructure? But at the same time, as you and I were just talking about, we built our way into this situation. We're going to have to build our way out of it, and building the systems in the communities, the physically happy, healthy, vibrant communities, systems, structures that are going to help make sure that these kinds of things don't repeat themselves and don't become inevitable, right? I think about Dr. King and the beloved community. He talked about the beloved community, this place where everyone would come together, everyone would feel valued, everyone would have the resources that they need, we would be invested in each other. He didn't think that the beloved community was going to just come naturally from our proclamation that we now believe in each other, that we love each other, or that it would come naturally from the passage of civil rights laws. He knew it was something that we had to build intentionally and work towards. And so at the end of the day, my call is for us all to come together to build that beloved community, to work together. And that's going to look different for different people depending on the work that they do.